Hi there, this is Jack Tyler from the Boston Sax Shop, and in this video, we're going to be going over the 3 major repair jobs that we offer here. A clean oil adjust, a repad, and an overhaul/mechanical restoration. I want to show you how to determine which one of these jobs is going to be right for you and your horn. So first off, we need to define and assess 3 indications that your saxophone needs one of these major repairs. Number 1 is key noise, number 2 is failing pads, and number 3 is mechanical wear and play. First up is assessing for key noise. Most players think that the only time you need to take your horn apart and clean it is when it gets overhauled and all the pads changed. Now, unfortunately, if you really want to do right by your precious instrument, then this is not the case. Saxophone keys are held on by hardened steel rods and screws, and these keys are made from soft brass. The only thing that keeps the steel from wearing down the brass keys is oil and grease. Even the most durable synthetic lubricants can wear out in a year or so if the horn is regularly played, and having an oil change performed is paramount, not only for preventing expensive wear and tear on the mechanical systems of your horn, but also for keeping the horn playing quiet and the action feeling smooth. If your keys are clicking and clacking every time you play, it's a pretty good bet that this key noise is the cause of the lubrication being evaporated, and it's time to get your horn in on the bench ASAP. Next up is assessing for failing or old pads. Assessing for the condition of your pads might seem obvious, but there are a few things to look for to determine if they need to be changed. As a general rule of thumb, the pads on a saxophone should be changed every 7 to 10 years. And of course, it depends on the player, the amount of usage, and the maintenance practices, which can affect that number significantly. As pad leather ages, 3 things happen that start to make them really hard to adjust and prevent your horn from playing at its maximum potential, meaning they need to be changed. First off, pads dry out, and the leather becomes brittle, leading to it eventually ripping in the seal of the pad. Saxophone pads are adjusted mainly by manipulating the supple leather, and once the pads become dried out and hardened, this becomes nearly impossible, resulting in lots of leaks and inconsistent performance. Want to know if your pads are dried out? Literally just touch them, and if they don't have any kind of give and feel rock solid, they're probably toast. In conjunction with the leather drying out, pads will also shrink in their key cups over time. Again, one of the ways to adjust saxophone pads is by manipulating the edges of the leather, and it has to have some give in order for that to be possible. And in addition, if it's not being supported by the edges of the key cup because the pad has shrunk, it's going to be really hard for a tech to make those adjustments, let alone make them last. So again, if you have older pads and are struggling with keeping your horn playing consistently, checking for gaps between the pad and the edge of the key cup can give you an idea of the root cause. Lastly, as the pads age, the leather itself will become more porous, meaning even if the horn looks like it's sealing with a leak light, there can be micro leaks all over the saxophone in the seat that are going to affect the horn in a negative way. If more than a few of your pads have some of the symptoms that I mentioned above, besides the major culprits like low E flat and the palm keys which have to be changed more often, then it's probably a good indication that all of the pads should be changed. Finally, it's important to be able to assess your horn for key wear and play. Remember that key noise we were talking about earlier? Well, if you let your horn go too long without an oil change, the steel rods and screws are inevitably going to start wearing down on the brass keys, which results in play, actual physical gaps in your key work. To assess for key wear, simply grip each key by the spine and gently see if you can move it both back and forth between the posts or the other keys that it's adjacent to, also radially on the rod or the pivot screw. Now, if you assess your horn and the play is much more than just a minimal amount, this absolutely needs to be addressed. Having key play is really going to increase the instability of regulation on your saxophone. Literally, pads can seal one day and not the next just based on where the key has shifted due to your finger pressure, resulting in a ton of frustration because of that additional movement. Now, when you've determined that there's key wear and play on your horn, just changing the pads and materials is not going to resolve the problems of inconsistent regulation, because the literal foundation of the key work is not right. Just as importantly, the longer the keys continue to wear, the more difficult and expensive it's going to be to correct down the road, as it is a specialized and time-consuming process to refit keywork. So now that you have a working understanding of how to assess these issues on your horn, let's go over which repairs you might need depending on the condition of your instrument. Now, if your saxophone has key noise, but the pad leather across the majority of the horn is still pliant and only a few years old, and you've also determined that there is little to no key wear on your saxophone, it's probably a great candidate for what we call a clean oil and adjust. A clean oil and adjust, or a COA, entails a complete breakdown and cleaning of your saxophone body and neck, flushing out of all the old lubrication from the keywork and individually cleaning each of the pads. Then the horn is reassembled, re-oiled, and adjusted for regulation. Depending on the condition, there might be some pads and materials that get changed along the way as well. Now, if you've determined that your horn has key noise, the majority of the pads have become brittle and shrunk, or kind of reaching that point of being 7 to 10 years old, but there's little to no key wear, then the appropriate job is most likely going to be what we call a repad. Now, a repad is literally everything that I just mentioned in a COA, plus the replacement of literally all the pads and materials such as the corks and felts, and minimal to no key fitting. If your saxophone has key noise, really old pads, and key wear, then it's probably time for a full mechanical restoration or overhaul, which is a repad plus the individual key work, which can bring your horn back to better than factory standards in terms of the tolerance of the fit. For a more detailed overview of the Boston Sax Shop overhaul, please check the video in the description below. I hope this video has been informative and should help you better assess your instrument for major repairs. Now, should you have any questions or would like to establish a quote or timeline for work on your saxophone done by the Boston Sax Shop, you can of course reach us at repairs@bostonsaxshop.com, or you can of course book an appointment on our website to visit us for a free consultation. Now, if you don't live near Boston, don't worry, it's not a problem. We've established a mail-in repair service, which we call our Repair Concierge service, which you can also learn more about on our website at bostonsaxshop.com. And thank you for watching.